Hey everyone, I am so excited. I finally have this box in my hands. It arrived today. And let me tell you a little backstory before we go ahead and open it. So this past summer, I was asked by Tamron to test out their pre-release version of the 50 to 400 millimeter f4.5 to 6.3 lens. Now, I wasn't so sure what the extra 50 millimeters would do. I already have the 100 to 400. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll test it out. But I wasn't really sure that 50 millimeters would make much of a difference for me. Well, I was completely wrong. I had about 2 months to test this lens out and explore its full capacity while I was in Alaska getting ready to teach my photography workshops up there. And so with a plenitude of wildlife, both on land and on sea, I got to test it out in a lot of different ways. And so I want to show you what it is, what it's about, and talk about it a little bit. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and open the box. I've been waiting a while for this. It's a good thing it's finally here. Okay, little letter from Tamron with an invoice, a lot of packing material, but it's recyclable. It's always fun to get a new lens. So this lens, I should mention, is for the Sony E-mount. So I have started using Sony. I have a Sony A1. I also have a Canon R5, but I've been using the Sony a little bit more lately. And so this lens is specifically for the Sony E-mount lenses, and it is a full frame lens designed to go on a full frame camera, but you can also use it on a crop sensor Sony as well. But this is for Sony mirrorless. All right, so we have a little packet with information and a couple of languages. We have what appears to be, I believe, warranty information. And I'm just gonna set that aside for now and get to the good stuff. All right, so box is empty. I'm gonna set this aside. And now we have the goods. So take off the styrofoam on both sides. Comes in a white protective package. And the reveal, here it is. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. First, it has a lens hood on it, and it's mounted this way, but you just flip it around, line up the little dots on the top, and you have your lens hood locked in place. And I always shoot with a lens hood. It helps with any kind of lens flare. It also helps if you're walking around and you accidentally bump your lens on something, it's gonna hit the hood before it'll ever hit the glass inside. Okay, I have 3 lenses now out on the table. I've cleared off the boxes, and this is the one we originally opened, and then I have 2 more. These are all Tamron lenses, but for size comparison purposes, I wanted to show you the 3. So this ends up still being the shortest lens, the 50 to 400 Tamron for Sony E-mount. But in comparison, here's the Tamron 100 to 400 for DSLR lenses, and the Tamron 150 to 500 for Sony E-mount. So you can see this is a really compact lens when it's pulled back compared to even the other 2, which aren't especially long to begin with. I'm going to set these aside for a moment, and we'll continue to talk about the 50 to 400. So in its compact form, this is actually 7.2 inches long, but when you zoom it out, it's 10.2 inches. And one thing that's nice is the radius, the arc is only about 75 degrees. So when you're zooming in for things or zooming back for things in order to get more wide angle or to get more close up to something, this is really nice because it's quick and easy. Some lenses you've got to turn and turn and turn to get to that level of either pulled back or zoomed out. This is nice and quick. This lens is only about 2.5 pounds, so it's pretty lightweight compared to other 100 to 400 or other similar types of lenses, and it's made with professional grade glass, and it compares in the quality to lenses that are at least twice the price. This is one of the reasons why I have loved Tamron, is because of the fact they make beautiful glass. They make millions of lenses a year. They really know what they're doing, and it shows. All they do are lenses, and they put all of that knowledge and technology into these lenses to give you really wonderful value for the price. Now, as photographers, it's nice having all these features, but let's talk about the purpose of the lens itself, that 50 to 400 millimeter spread. Now, this zoom allows me to be able to capture things close up and then actually capture landscapes or subjects within a landscape in an instant. You know, I talked about that rotational arc being quick, but when I need to go from 50 millimeters to capture something wide angle, all the way to 400 millimeters because maybe that landscape or that wildlife has detail that I really want to capture, it can do it in a heartbeat. Here's some examples without moving my feet of what I can capture just with this lens. So in this first case, there's an eagle and I wanted to capture it in its elements with the volcano behind it, the eagle on the stump, and for that I used 50 millimeters. But quickly before the eagle flew away, I was able to zoom into 400 millimeters and capture that beautiful detail. And pay attention to the sharpness. This lens is sharp and fast. I love it. It's sharp from end to end. I've had no problem capturing beautiful images with this lens at any focal length. Sharp, clear, and beautiful. But let's talk about another example where we are shooting from end to end and you need to use it throughout its range. There are times, and in these particular circumstances, I haven't moved my feet more than maybe a foot or two to take this series of pictures of a harbor in Seward, Alaska. But there are many ways that you can capture images without having to change lenses. I can go from 50 millimeters all the way through the whole succession using different levels of focal distance in this lens, all the way to 400, and capture beautiful images. I couldn't do that with a prime or a lens that had more limitations. I really love this lens because it opens up the possibilities without you ever having to change a lens. Now this lens has a fluorine coating, and this is something that's usually reserved for much higher end lenses, but it has it. Tamron's brought it into this lens. And what fluorine does is it helps prevent dirt and debris from sticking to the lens. So if you're out in the elements, dust, weather, what have you, or you have fingerprints on your lens, it helps prevent them from sticking. But if you do have something that sticks, it also makes it much easier to wipe off. It's similar to a Teflon coating in a kitchen pan. So I really appreciate that feature being on this lens. I shoot a lot at ranches, I shoot in Alaska with weather, and this is something that I really, really love. One of the reasons why I picked up a copy of this lens is because it's weatherproof. Now I shoot a lot in Alaska and I lead workshops in Alaska where we're often out in boats in various places where there's rain, mist, splashes from water, and so forth. I love this lens because I don't have to worry about putting covers over it all the time that can get in the way and cumbersome. It's truly weatherproof, gasketed from end to end, and that allows me to shoot out in the rain in confidence. Now, I wouldn't go and shoot in a hurricane or, stand out in a blizzard or, put it in a sink. I wouldn't do that with any of my gear, but I can trust that this is weatherproof. And in fact, it's also the lightest 400 millimeter weatherproof lens in its class. One great feature about this lens, in addition to the 50 to 400 focal range, is the macro capabilities. It can do 1 to 2 macro on the 50 millimeter end, and you can focus at 9.8 inches from your sensor to your object. And what that translates to is about 2 inches from the front of the lens to your object. So you can get close, beautiful macro shots at 1 to 2. So what that means is if I had a quarter, such as this is, just shy of 1 inch wide. If I photograph this quarter life size, it would translate to half life size on the back of the sensor, on your camera sensor. And so half life size, or 1 to 2, is an incredible capability for a lens that can also pull in eagles from far away and make them beautiful and close up. So this magnification range is great, and I love this macro capability. It comes in wonderfully handy if I want to go and photograph a flower, or I can get up close to sea creatures or whatever I'm doing, and I don't ever have to change a lens. I can zoom in and then walk up close and photograph 2 inches away from the front of the lens. I love that. So talking technically again, let's go back to some of the other features of this lens. So this has vibration compensation. You can turn it off, or you can turn it to mode 1 or mode 2. Mode 1 allows you to do standard hand holding with subjects that are in front of you, where you're not doing a lot of panning or motion. Mode 2 is panning, and that allows you to get up to 3 stops of image stabilization while you're tracking birds or other subjects across the sky or ground, or maybe for sports or action photography. That is a wonderful thing. It stabilizes for the vertical shake, but it will not try to correct for horizontal movement, which is exactly what you're trying to use in panning. And this lens is also very fast focusing, which I love for birds in flight and wildlife. And here's a couple of examples of where I've used the panning on even slow shutter shots, so I get that beautiful ethereal look with my pan shots of birds in flight. And there's one traditional shot that you can see as well of an eagle, but this shows some of the capabilities of this lens and how the panning system works with that image stabilization. So if you need to update your lens or you want to customize your lens, there's a few options for you to do that. There is the Tamron connector port right here, which is a USB-C port. You connect the cord to your USB-C port on your computer, and you can do a variety of things. You can update the firmware, you can change custom settings, and there's actually 3 different custom functions that you can set with this lens. And you can do all that right from your computer by downloading this software from Tamron. So for the custom functions, you can set things like custom focus limiters, focus presets, and you also have this little button here you can use for that. You can change the focus ring, so you can have it focus from right to left or left to right. You can use your preference based upon perhaps other cameras that you've used in the past. Some tend to turn one way, others tend to turn another, depending on the brand. Well, you can do what's most comfortable for you. There's many more options that you can customize and then program them into that custom feature here. So you have 3 custom functions you can use. Videographers, there's even stuff for you that you can program into this lens, such as the A to B focus setting. So you can go from point A to point B and change your focus automatically and have those smooth transitions. You can also have ring function changed, where you can change this ring from using focus or using aperture as you turn it. So that's something you can program. And then you can also change the manual focus from linear to non-linear. A few last things about this lens. If you decide to put a filter on the front of it, you'll need a 67mm filter. That's pretty standard among several of Tamron's lenses. So if you already have those filters, they will work for this lens as well, 67mm. And the other thing that you can do is get an optional collar for this lens that allows you to mount your cameras from the lens onto the tripod instead of using the camera itself. So this collar is Arca Swiss compatible, and it would go here and sit right underneath your lens. You can mount it to any Arca Swiss compatible tripod head or other piece of gear that you need. So let's wrap up. We have a 50 to 400mm lens that has macro capabilities, and at the 50mm range, you can do 1 to 2 macro, and you can have about a 2-inch focal distance minimum focus from your subject to your lens. And that actually extends all the way through to about 70mm. You also have, in addition to that, you have the image stabilization, where you can do 1 or 2 for stationary subjects, or for panning, you can use either one of those. You have fast focusing, which I love. You have the 3 custom functions that you can program. The whole entire lens is weatherproof and gasketed. It only weighs about 2.5 pounds, and I just love it with my Sony A1. It's a wonderful combination. I can't wait to get started using it again. It's been a great lens. I hope you enjoy yours. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you out in the field.